Hello, my name's Tracie Daily. Welcome to Killers and Crime. I've been giving a lot of thought to where this was going to go. Firstly, let me give you a heads up, it's just me here today. Mrs. is off out with the girls. And you might hear 5 fish tanks bubbling away in the background, and you're probably going to hear my 2 cockatiels who are... It's mating season, so they're probably going to go crazy at some point. I teach my kids not to give up, but to be adaptable enough to change, that to do so, if they choose to. I teach them happiness is more important than anything. And you know, I can go months listening to and being around killers and crime and murder and manslaughter and case after case after case and be absolutely fine and not bother me at all. However, recently it's got to the point where there's so much going on and so much I've been looking at and delved into, I've needed to step back. The past hasn't crept up on me in the slightest. It's not like that. I know a lot of people it takes them back to things, but it's more for me that I end up with associations that aren't necessarily linear and aren't necessarily accurate, and it puts me in a position where I'm not trusting people as much. There's no paranoia or anything like that. I'm fully aware of everything that's going on and happy with my life, very happy with my life. However, normal things that happen in everyday life for the average person, they deal with, they move on. I find that sometimes I'll associate them more and more with other things that then leads into the whole situation being unfair and life becoming unfair, and I blow it up a little bit out of proportion sometimes. Now, it can be extremely positive. I had an event recently where I purchased an item from a store and it was broken. So I took it back and explained the situation, and it's broken, they shouldn't have sold it. And it happens from time to time. You know, life isn't always fair. And in most situations they just replace the item. It's not a big deal. It wasn't thousands of pounds worth of money. But the principle was doing my head in. It's like, you need to refund this. They said no. I was like, I bought it the same day, it's damaged, you need to refund it. And most people would have maybe complained, manager, the Karens, and then the head office, and then probably left it there. I didn't. I raised the situation, didn't help. Went to the manager, they couldn't help. Went to the area manager, they didn't help. Then I went online, contacted them through all their socials and so on and so forth. It's something or nothing, but they should have resolved it and they didn't. And I was trying to use it as a lesson to teach my daughters, it was my eldest, it was an item for my eldest, that you should do things in a certain way. You always stick up for yourself. And so I had to all be polite and professional and all through paperwork. And I showed her sort of step by step what we were doing and how we were doing it. And I was hoping that, you know, they'd see right from wrong, see common sense. And it got to the point I was thinking, okay, I need to make this a legal thing now, because seriously, it is, you know, I am accurate, and you know, the law on it was very clear cut, but they were still insisting they had this other policy, and so they didn't have to do anything, and it just became stupid. For the money it was worth to have fought it was completely pointless. And so I turned it into a different learning curve of saying to her, you have to accept certain things and move on. And we went and bought her another tablet, and we've got more than enough money to have sorted this out anyway. It's something that should have been easy became stupid and problematic, in that it was really grating on me when it shouldn't have done. And it wasn't because of the situation at all, it was because of the unfairness of life. And it was because there's other cases going on that I was around, and I'd got into the mindset of life isn't fair. People aren't trustworthy. The police, because of, well, look how they bodged the Nicola Bully case, and several others I could come up to. Wayne Couzens springs to mind, you know, hey, what a genius this guy was. And I could go on and on and on, but that's going to take me on a completely different rant. My point is, I get to the point where I'm like, I don't trust the police. And that's not fair. That's really not, because a lot of them are allegedly, really decent guys. And the same with other situations in my life. I got to the point where I'm like, somebody says something a little off at work, and I'm like, really? Was that called for? And it can become an amount to a bigger problem that it really needs to be. And it shouldn't. It really shouldn't. So I took a step back for a long time. Must have been 3-4 months now. And we've still kept up to date with what's going on, just because we have got an interest and we have written down tons and tons of material. However, it's got to the point now that I don't know if I'm going to continue this anymore. You see, I was looking up a lot of news articles recently about my own case. And I say my own, it's not my own, is it? It's my mum's. More specifically, it's my father's. My mum wasn't tried for anything. And it took me a lot of years to be able to say mum without getting upset. And that's what this is about. It's about putting your emotions out there and letting people see the real you. So, the real me? I have an extremely happy life. My kids are amazing, they're well taken care of. My missus makes me happy. I trust the 10 people that I have in my close inner circle. What my kids are unaware of is I also have trust issues and anxiety related issues. They are not extraordinarily huge. One of these articles pulled up that my mother was apparently 80% disabled due to her extreme anxieties of being claustrophobic and agoraphobic and having OCD and all the rest of it. And they actually wrote this in this news article, that she was 80% disabled. Now, where they got this information from is beyond me, because I had her medical records. I still have her medical records, and it doesn't say anything along those lines at all. It does mention claustrophobia, agoraphobia, self-harm, and so on and so forth. It doesn't mention anything about it being 80% disabled. I believe it came from my father's brother, who's a psychiatrist come whatever he is, therapist, I believe, who was trying to get my father away from where he was going to be, which was Walton Prison, which he was there very briefly, and transferred to Scott Clinic. And yes, I've put the names of the places out there purposefully. They're accurate, they're not changed like in the books. And I'm 100% sure that the woman he ended up having a relationship with in Scott Clinic, he knew beforehand. I'm sure she's the woman that was in the hotel in Wilmslow. And I can't prove that. I was a child. I have no anger about it. But those type of trust issues after something big has turned up, like your father killing your mother, or your uncle abusing your sister, or whatever the hell it might be, unfortunately they stay, or tend to stay, on some subconscious level, that you learn to mask or cover up or deal with or handle to some reasonable degree or other, until sometimes you can't. And with me, for whatever reason it manifested as being needle phobic. I was terrified of the dentist for years. I didn't go. I wasn't terrified of the dentist as such, I was terrified of needles. And it could have been any of the accounts that I'm going to go over in this book. It could have been any of the accounts from previously. I had therapists tell me it was because I associated a needle with a knife and I thought they were going to cut me. I had them tell me that on some level it was because I'd had an account where I sat with my father at a dentist one time and he punched me in the mouth. I don't know, it could be a number of things. Personally, I think it was because I fell out of a loft and I got a wire caught on my neck. Several people told me that they thought I was trying to kill myself. I wasn't. It was a sheer accident, but it had restricted my airway. And then I went to the dentist a few days later. I needed work done, and that was my first panic attack. I freaked out. I was in a horrible situation at the time and it got worse and worse. Today, it's about 15 years later, and I've got better and better and better, and I've not had a panic attack in years. and yet still I had a dentist appointment a few weeks back. My teeth are almost perfect now, and I cancelled it because we had a lot going on, normal stuff that was going on. One of our relatives has seriously not been well, and this company playing up with this item that they should have done, and then there was a woman at work just being a pain in the backside for no other reason than that she was going through some sort of depression and taking it out on everybody, and it wasn't even personalised to me, it was everybody, and there was just stressy after stressy after stressy, and I was like, okay, you know what, I can't deal with this right now. Everything else in my life was fine, but that one I cancelled. I only needed a filling, it was ridiculous to have cancelled. So I went back a couple of weeks later, it was about 3 days ago now, and it turns out the tooth's cracked and they can't pull it out, so they're going to send me to the hospital to have the work done. I was like, you know what, anything that's a stressor in my life I'm just going to step back from right now. So it might be permanent, it might not be, but when it's starting to manifest again with trust issues for me, it's time for me to go, you know, I'm taking a break. But it says my mother was 80% disabled due to severe anxieties. I'm not. My brother's not. He won't mind me saying. I won't go into the other situations with my other relatives, but I know he won't mind me saying. And we have really, really good, happy lives because we've surrounded ourselves with really good, happy, decent people. Or at least I have, and I'm pretty sure my brother has. And it's time to concentrate on that. I don't want to be remembered as Tracie Daily whose father killed their mother. I don't want to be remembered as the guy who grew up in care. I don't want to be remembered as the guy who was happy, peppy, positive, bubbling all around his family, got on, did great things and everything else, and then sat here and moaned and bitched and complained into a microphone. I don't want to be remembered as the guy who just faced anxiety, who was a survivor. And you know, I've got, I don't know, must be about 30, 40 reviews now. They're not loads in the scheme of things, but these are random people I don't know who've read a book and said, wow, you're so inspirational, you're amazing, you've done great, you've done brilliant, thank you, because every one of them means that somebody else might actually read the book and might get something from it. It does mean something, it is important, and there is people going through it all over the world, unfortunately. However, I don't want to be remembered as that. Ideally, I don't want my girls ever knowing about this situation at all. They will when they're older. I know they will. My eldest now reads everything and has full access to the internet. It's monitored by us, but she has full access. She's smart. She's really smart. We are so proud of both of them. So proud. But she came up the other day and was like, hey, Dad, read this. And she's going for a test, which means if she passes she could go to grammar school, and we just like, yeah, that's brilliant, wicked, well done, kiddo, you know, you can do this or you can do that or you can do the other, and it's up to you how you go through with it, and yada yada yada. So pleased. I broke down. I broke down in front of her. You know what, I've got a newspaper article that says by my uncle, and it's got a picture of like several people on there, and it says, we are unemployed people, we have no standing here, nobody cares about us. And I am proud I broke that cycle, because they didn't grow up, my girls didn't grow up being told they were useless or no good or being hit or being abused in whatever context. They didn't grow up with alcohol and violence and drugs around them. They didn't grow up with a prostitute living across the road and people throwing junk at the windows and being stood in a corner and slapped until you cried, and then being told if you carry on crying then you're going to get a slap, and then you stop crying and they slap you because you're not crying and they're not getting a kick out of things. They didn't grow up with any of that shit. So I am proud that I broke that cycle. I am proud that this is amounting to something. But you know what? I don't want to be remembered of the guy that makes those associations because his daughter has done something amazing. I don't want it to be about I've broke that cycle. I want it to be about my daughter has done absolutely amazing. I am so proud of her. She has done awesome. I want it to be about my youngest has just started doing cartwheels or whatever it might be, and I'm so chuffed with them. And so I don't know if I'm going to continue doing these podcasts. I'm probably not. If I do, it'll be the odd one here and there with my wife because a case has been really interesting. But I found two recently that are very much like my own case, very much. And I contacted both of them, and I totally understand, didn't reply. And that's sad. Not for me, it doesn't bother me whether they get in touch or not. Not even for them, although I know that sometimes the podcasting or the writing, definitely the writing, can be very therapeutic. But for the people that I know who've left me reviews or contacted me directly and said, hey, you know what, this helped and this has been brilliant, sad for them, because if it's not brought forward, there is thousands upon thousands of people that won't have had somebody to sort of look at and go, hey, you know what, you did great and you've really helped me because I'm going through this as well and I thought no one understood. But like I said, that's not where I want to go. I want my kids to look up later on and go, you know, my dad did something positive. I don't want it associated with something negative. So hey, you know, if you hear my voice somewhere else under a totally different name and I'm reading children's books or I'm reciting poetry somewhere, then hopefully they'll associate it with something good. But I did make myself a promise when I started this. When I started writing Tracie's story 10.5 years ago by hand. Big mistake. If you're a self-published author, do not start writing out by hand unless you want the keepsake. But it's an amazing keepsake. I made myself a promise that I would write it all, and I did. I made myself a promise that I'd try and get it traditionally published, and I'd have X amount of failures, and then I'd do the self-publish route, and that's what I did. And it's okay. It's not 100% perfect by any means. I'm human, but it is far more than I thought it would have been. It's been all over the world. It's not massive, but it's reached all over the world. My mother's case from Macclesfield in Cheshire, from the Wizard Caravan site Alderley Edge, from 6 newspaper articles that I could find, this tiny little account of writing, half of which was absolute crap. One of them said she had 5 kids. I don't know how they come out with this shit, I really don't. She had 4. 100%. There's no discrepancy there. There was 4 children. Has reached all around the world. So it has done everything I wanted to. But I then made myself a promise when I saw this girl, Serene. Can't remember the surname. I saw this blind girl on Britain's Got Talent, and I made myself a promise that Tracie's story and then later Checkmate would be on audio. I'm not going to break that promise to myself or to them, and so here is Checkmate. And you know, before I get into it, I'm just going to recite something I wrote here. In the name of being completely honest. I have contacted recently at least 40 survivors that I know of. That's survivors of murder and manslaughter. Survivors of people who've had somebody killed. So they may have had a parent killed, or a daughter, or a son, or a brother, or a sister, or it may have been in front of them, or it may have been a different location, but they're survivors. Of those 40, 0 are comfortable speaking with me on killers and crime. I both understand and respect that. You only need to go on Netflix and type in I am a killer to find the type of people that have handled and dealt and survived these situations, and they're absolutely amazing. And shout out to Sam Support After Murder and Manslaughter over here in the UK, because they're awesome and they help so many people. However, 90% of the viewers don't watch it for the victims. 90% of the viewers don't watch it because they want to hear the voices. They watch it because they want to see people's guts ripped out in an emotional way. They want to know how much they've been hurt and how they survived. And they watch it because mainly they want to know about the killing. And I know because I watch it for the same reasons. I just understand the survivor's perspective more because of what I've been through. But I do understand. I won't name them because it sounds like I'm being derogatory, and I'm not. There's a podcast I listen to a lot which is absolutely awesome, and part of the reason that it's awesome is because the lady's storytelling is absolutely amazing, but also because she leaves no stone unturned in how graphic a case is, and also in how much information she finds out about that case and the lead up to it. And that's why people listen. But personally, I refuse to give a voice to the killers. My mum was worth more than that, and so am I. I will be casting something new, just not here. However, I promised I would complete Checkmate, so here it is, completely free. It's the full audio of Checkmate by Tracie Daily. Enjoy. Acknowledgements. Without you, none of this would have been possible, Ellen. You've given me more than 2 amazing daughters, more than love and encouragement. You've given me family. I love you. Wendy. It's no secret I'd not be here if it wasn't for you. You put everything into perspective for me. I'll be forever grateful. Thanks for being the light. Nigel M., my therapist and my friend. I love and miss you dearly. You're an inspiration. Lee C. Miss you daily, my friend. Thanks for the memories. I stay strong because of you. Malona. When I got overconfident, you knocked me back into place. When I didn't have the strength to stand, you dragged me back up, whether I wanted you to or not. Thank you, much love. Shirley, you trusted me where I didn't even trust myself. Forever grateful. George and Shirley C., the only couple I'd ever have let take the place of my parents. Thank you. Mark S., the only social worker I ever trusted. Julie M., you're a tribute to your faith. Thank you. Not only did you teach me math, you taught me self-respect. Rose D., one session, one meeting, one of the most inspirational people I have ever met. I am honoured to know you. You changed my life completely. David L. I may still be stuck in a very bad situation if it wasn't for your contributions, David. Thank you. Miss Whalen. Writing those 28 pages that day made me realise I could create anything. So I created this. Thank you for your guidance. Mum, until we meet again. www.samm.org.uk. Tracie's story and Checkmate. Tracie's story began in Macclesfield in 1982 and details the sequence of abuse by a psychopath father up until the age of 10, where his father then killed his mother. Having weaved his way through 3 foster placements, 4 schools, and struggling with identity, trust and self-harm issues, Tracie grapples with responsibility and blame. At 15, when Tracie's story comes to an end, he's just returned to his father, with a new person taking the place of Mum and new faces in the place of his siblings. The weight of his grandfather's death lay heavily on him, and confidence was low. It was another slap to another woman that had another outcome. It was then that Tracie's story began again, and that Checkmate was born. With little in the way of role models, huge choices had to be made, the biggest being, who would he become? Checkmate. Chapter 1. Cass was great. As time has gone on, we'd had a lot of chats about how they met, and the story was the same, but never quite lined up with Wenzel's. I'd not figured out why yet. Why is her hair so short? I'd asked Wenzel, it's my father, in the car on the way to school. It was odd. She'd have been prettier with longer hair, and I liked long hair. She was beaten by her ex once, so bad he pulled a lot of her hair out. Now she's scared to have it long, he said. I believed it. A car stopped suddenly in front of us, but we'd missed it by a good 2 feet. Wait here, he said, chucking the car door open. He had the lad out of the car and threw him half across his own boot before I knew what was happening. The lad was terrified. Wenzel had a word with him nose to nose, and the lad got back in the car, all the while holding his hands up and shaking his head, and then the car drove off. What just happened? I asked. Little fucker stopped dead in front of me, he said, slamming his door. Did you have to hit him? I asked. Oh, that was nothing. You keep truanting off school and you'll get a lot worse. What? You thought I didn't know about that? I know fucking everything. If you ever look at me like you did the other night. He glanced at me, but then looked back to the road. He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't have to. I didn't reply. I wasn't going to school. I'd made the decision somewhere between him threatening to kill me and him trying to replace Mum. I couldn't pinpoint the logic, but I knew it had to be done. I was different, and if he hit Cass, I'd kill him. I kept silence all the way there. "There's Caroline," he said, pointing to her, heading towards school as we drove past in the car. "Don't be late, we have somewhere special to go tomorrow," he said. I got out of the car and slammed the door as I headed straight towards Keel. "What? You're pissed," he said, hearing the door slam. "What if he gets out, man? He's just there," Keel said, waving his ciggy around. "Fuck him. He gets out, you leg it, and I deal with him," I said loud enough for him to hear me. My head was starting to hurt from the pressure building up inside me. Wenzel sped off and Keel asked me, "What's hot, man?" "How soon can Stoppy be ready?" I asked him. "Any time, man, he really likes you." "Cool. Thanks, man," I said, giving him a hug. Keel and I spent the day truanting, playing football right there on the school field in the blistering heat in nothing but our boxer shorts. Fuck everyone. Wenzel picked me up and we went back to his flat. I went straight to my room and played Streets of Rage all night. Fuck everyone. I had no plan. Fuck Dad, fuck Brenda, fuck Cass, fuck God and fuck family. How could I tell them? "Hey Jonathan, come live with me and Dad and your new family. He's a violent killer and you'll love it." No chance. How could I go back to Brenda's? "Hey, you know, you were right. He's nuts and I'm just like him. Last night I stayed alive by truanting and then stayed awake all night pretending he was every motherfucker on a game where I stabbed people. Aren't I a good boy?" Well, I'd calmed down. I asked myself, what would Nigel do? "Do what you want. Fuck everyone else, lad." His words rang out. I'd join the army like my Uncle Carl. No ties, no family, nobody to hurt. But how? I started doing kickboxing again. This time it was the English version. I'd had to tell Pete that we visited a lot of Wenzel's friends and needed to be at home to pull it off, but it worked. Pete was my social worker. The truth was, I didn't want to be around Wenzel when he was with Cass. He was more like old Wenzel then, and if I did have to defend myself, I didn't want Cass hurt either. Wenzel was driving and smoking one after another. I was dying for a fag. "What, does it bother you?" he asked, lighting another. "They're your lungs, not mine," I replied. "You really hate smoking, don't you?" he asked. "Yeah, it's terrible," I said. "Okay, I'll stop," he told me. "Really?" I asked, surprised. "No, not really, dickhead," he told me, blowing smoke in my face just as I recognised where we were. "This Solderly Edge," I said. "Clever boy," he replied. It was where Mum was killed. "Why are we here?" I queried. "To see some old friends and go for a hike, and you better be on your best behaviour, right?" He pulled up outside a big house and prodded me hard in the chest. Had he just hit me? I didn't like this game. My brain was screaming, "Run, get out, leg it." Something was very, very wrong. I walked around a large hedge and recognised the house immediately. Winnie and Phil. Jonathan and Jodie's first foster placement. It's my brother and sister's first foster home. He knocked on the door and they let us in. Wenzel told them how great my life was now, and I sat there like a good boy and laid a little less charm than Wenzel had. They showed me pictures of when Jonathan and Jodie went on holiday with them. I looked and tried not to remember them. It hurt too much. I'd had Jonathan outside in a wheelbarrow in that garden back when I thought it would all be okay, till my family were back together. I felt so strong and protective of them. Now what was I? I was an animal. My family was gone. My charming father was actually a manipulative psychopath. I looked it up, and he'd fit the description perfectly. We left and Wenzel swung a left instead of a right turn like we should have. "Another one for the book. Won't be long now," he said, getting excited. I'd never seen him like this. He was literally bobbing up and down. He was getting a sexual thrill. "Oh, you'll like this. You'll like this a lot," he said, pulling into the Solderly Edge caves. I'd visited Mum and Dad just once in the caravan, and I was hopeless with directions. But I remember pictures, and I remember trees very well. "I've been here before," I said, recalling the caravan site less than 40 feet away behind a building. I realised I shouldn't have said anything. "Oh, so you do remember?" "Yeah, long time ago. Follow me," he said, grabbing a policeman's torch from his boot and some rope. I didn't move. Something wasn't right. I was searching my memory and came up with a scene. In the scene I was in a caravan. I'd visited it from the foster placement I was still in. I didn't recall it when I was younger, but through some sort of flashback it was returning. I could see the inside of the caravan. I moved a pillar and found condoms. "What are these?" I'd asked him at the time. Balloons, Wenzel said and laughed. I'd known he was lying, but I hadn't known what they were. Mum was sat holding her knees up to her chest on the bed. Her hair was over her face. Balloons, aren't they, love? He said, tapping her leg and then rubbing his hand up it. She only had the nightgown on. Yeah, she said, uninterested. Her eyes didn't meet ours, and her head didn't move. She was very sad. As I stood there remembering that scene, I realised I knew how she felt. She'd known something bad would happen, but not what. She was feeling the same thing I was right now, stood in a field next to a rock face with Wenzel. A wizard lived here, he said. Look, he added. I walked over to where he had gone, but I kept a good 15 feet between us. I was ready to run, but felt any attempt would be hopeless. He pointed down a large drop filled with jagged rock and greenery. Never find a body down there, he said, smiling. Was this his plan? Kill Mum and bury her down there? Why was I here? This was surreal. Big drop, I said, stepping back as he came closer. He stopped at the edge a while, and then walked over to a grated-over cave entrance. After inspecting it for several seconds, which somehow looked fake, he moved around the corner. Come on, he said, beckoning me towards a huge hole the size of 5 of me, side by side, at least 6 feet high. It was actually a cave into a cliff face. No, I said. Come on, it'll be fun, he said. What's that for? I asked, pointing at the rope. This? This is in case we get lost. Yeah, it's in case we get lost, so we can leave a trail and find our way out, he added, as though making up a story on the spot. And this, he said, holding up the torch, is so I can see where we are going. You coming or not? He was lying. I shook my head. Suit yourself, he said, going inside the large hole. He shouted random shit about me coming in, but it was echoing, and I was busy looking around. If I had to run, it would be the closest building, and my line wasn't hard to remember. Help me, he killed my mum, and now he wants me dead. I should do it. I hoped I saw one other person walking a dog, and tried to catch his eye so he'd remember me. No luck. Wenzel popped his head around the entrance. Last chance. It doesn't go back far at all. Just 20 paces. Come on, chicken. I walked back to the car and ignored him. Okay, he said, following me. To this day, I'll never know whether he planned to off me or not, or if he was just getting a huge rise out of taking me back to where he killed my mother. Perhaps he intended to teach me a lesson, tie me up in the cave, gag me and leave me there for an hour to convince me he could kill me if he wanted to. Or perhaps he was genuine and wanted to have a laugh and a joke around the caves, the only way he knew how, by being a complete idiot. I have no idea. However, at the time it all felt very real. His intentions about killing me, genuine or not, he was definitely getting a kick out of being back where he killed my mother. Wenzel and I were in the flat for the last visit from Patrick Benson, my social worker. Wenzel was telling him he needed more money and what a great time him and I have had. You got anything to contribute, he asked me. Nah, I'll say goodbye outside, man, I said, walking down the stairs with him. What's on your mind? He said, taking his sunglasses off. Turn around, I said, making sure my back and his were to the flat's window. I didn't look up. I knew he'd be watching us. We were stood in the car park and it was warm out. You can't do anything. Agreed, I told him. I can't promise that. It depends on what you're going to tell me, he said. Fuck that, write this down, I said. He pulled his pad out. If anything happens to me, you need to know this, I said. Has he hit you? Patrick asked me straight away. I met his eyes. No. Right, I said, pointing at the pad. Wenzel has a girlfriend called Cassandra Charleston. She lives at 303 Chaplin Street, St. Helens, Merseyside. Blue door, right next to a field. Why are you telling me this? Patrick asked me. You wrote it down, I asked. Yeah, you're worried, he asked me. I'll be fine. But yeah, shit's turned bad. I can, he began as I cut him off. No, you do nothing. There's more that can get hurt than just me. Promise me, not until I say I asked. Okay, be careful, he said. Always, I replied, headed inside. I knew Wenzel would ask, so I headed straight into the living room. What was all that about? He said as soon as he'd watched Patrick's car leave. Oh, it was the usual shit. Caroline says hi, but she won't see you. Probation's almost over, so we only see Ginger Nut Patrick once every 6 months now. I lied. Good, he said. That's the end of chapter 1. Now, as I read through that, which seems like a million years ago now, because I'm in such a different place, and there's part of my concern that people only see the negatives because they'll only read this book. And as much as this book is amazing and inspirational, it's also a million years ago, and I'm a much, much different person. So much different, so much stronger. But I became aware that I have a severe fear of heights. My uncle, which you went into in the first book, hung me over a balcony when I was a kid. That was the start of my fear of heights. And I remember as I read through that part then about going to the edge, I didn't know there was any heights there, and it wasn't even the height that scared me. And I'm not even going to lie out of ego or, hey, I'm not scared of him or this, that and the other. He scared me. I was a child and he was a dickhead, and he did scare me. I don't know what was going to happen, but I remember looking down that gap. I don't know what he was going to do on Mum. I really don't. But I wholeheartedly believe he planned it. Now, some of the situation doesn't roll into that. He got his back kicked in, they were made homeless. He chose to leave though, and he handed the keys in at the council. He didn't have to, and because of that, he had nowhere to go, so he chose to be with his uncle. And I don't believe he planned that. I don't. I believe his plans went to getting her somewhere secluded after years of abuse to her and after trying to kill her previously, and then getting himself into a position where he could kill her. I believe he had that notion in his head the entire time. And through these other articles that I read just like yesterday and the day before, they very much threw his brother, the therapist, the shrink, totally different, the shrink, sorry. They tried to paint this picture that he needed help. It does specify quite accurately, as do his medical records before he killed his wife, that he has no mental health problems. Although when he was convicted of the crime, it was through diminished responsibility due to anger-related issues. And there is several articles later on that then question why he only got 2.5 years for manslaughter, reduced down from murder due to diminished responsibility. And the judge goes on to say, he can't have people hold a gun to his head when this crime has been committed and it's a serious offence. He has to give him a prison sentence. However, as he was held on remand for so long, he's going to serve less than 8 months, the majority of which, 8 months, the majority of which was served in Scott Clinic. Scott Clinic, where he was sleeping with the nurse, later on went on to abuse her children. Scott Clinic, a psychiatric hospital for the criminally unwell. His brother, a psychiatrist, the NHS. The woman he was sleeping with in the same hospital, Scott Clinic, worked there. I won't say her name, it's not fair to her. I don't think that's right to say that. But honestly, ask yourself if you knew her before. Long red hair, Winslow, hotel. Moved in with her. He was sleeping with this woman with red hair, with her mother in the living room with the kids. It's all in Tracie's story. Very specifically, Wenzel. It's all Tracie's story. My name's Tracie Daily, and I'll see you in a minute with chapter 2.